Hello, and thank you for checking back in with the Adams fam. I am John, and today I'm going to be reviewing One Piece chapter 1022, titled The Stars Take the Stage. And getting right into it, we start off with another reader request cover page, and this one is of a frog playing hide and seek with his huntadas and a bunch of hydrangea flowers. It's kind of a meh cover page, not really something super interesting, so I guess we'll be moving on. So the first page of this chapter is kind of set up to recap what has been going on and give us a bit of exposition. It also shows us the locations of the defeated Tobiropo and relativity to one another. And it is here that we get the official statement that all of the Tobiropo, barring X-Drake the traitor, have been defeated. And the following page is also a bit expositional. We get to see that Luffy is full and should be ready to go here shortly. We also got the official announcement that there are 15 minutes remaining until Onigashima is dropped on the Flower Capital. Narrowly, this would mean that Oda is about to pick up the pace in terms of storytelling. However, when it comes to manga or even anime, this could very well translate to being 50 to 60 chapters or even 20 to 30 episodes, so I'll take that with a grain of salt. So after we get past the first couple pages of exposition, the first real-time conflict that we get into is the fight between Fukuro Kuju and Raizo. And there's not a terrible amount of action for this fight. For the most part, we get to see Raizo use a clone jutsu, and then we get to see Fukuro Kuju using a move called the earlobe clackers. We get a little bit of comedy here when Raizo uses the clone jutsu and makes multiple copies of himself. He gives up which one is the real him when he is goaded by questioning his loyalty to Odin. And even though the action in this scene is, or this fight in particular for this time being, is scant, we do get a bit of an inspirational speech from Raizo in regards to the retainers, of which all 9 get their own panels on that page. We get to see that Ashura Doji, Kinemon, and Kiku are still out for the count. Obviously, there's been no death flags or no official death announcements, so we can assume for the time being they're still unconscious. Anyways, before that fight can be concluded, we move on to the next fight, which is between Killer and Hawkins. Now, I'm sure that some people could argue that Hawkins has already been through a good amount, but it would seem that Killer, but at least between the two of them, Killer has the upper hand here, as he has put in the works to Hawkins. He's had Hawkins burn through many lives already. Then in the following pages, we see that one of, if not his last life that he has for a straw man, is that of kids. Now, I do like the narrative choice here for them to put Killer in a situation of wanting to either harm his captain or win his fight, but we also get a little bit of character development, or at least a little bit of a character reveal of sorts with Killer when he laughs and says that I like your style. Now ultimately, it is a smart move on Hawkins' part to have Kid as one of his straw lives, but I also really appreciate the fact that Killer acknowledges this in his own smart way. So I'm very interested to see how this fight plays out, because I can't really tell how Killer's going to approach the situation. I'm sure that Kid would want him to go ahead and take Hawkins out anyway, but then how does that really affect the raid, since Big Mom is standing right in front of him, and it's a good chance that Law can't take Big Mom on his own. So despite only having 3 pages of that fight, there's a lot to imply and a lot to think about in terms of how it's going to progress and move forward from this point. After we leave that conflict, we go back to the performance floor on the Skull Dome, and we get to see that Sanji has been taking on King and Queen on his own, and he's not doing so hot. And speaking of that, I have to say that my favorite panel of this chapter is the one where King and Queen are standing side by side. It's very well drawn, and I think it really shows the imposing standing of those two characters and everyone who goes against them. And it appears that our alliance seems to be playing a game of keep away with Zoro, as King wants to put him out of his misery, or put him down before he has a chance to be healed and get up and cause trouble again. And as Sanji fights to protect Zoro, we see that Perospero is preparing to snipe Sanji from afar. And it is then that we see that Nekomamushi and someone who essentially snitches on Perospero, like, that's him, boss, they managed to save Sanji at the last minute. So we officially get to see the Nekomamushi and Perospero fight. I do have to say, though, I am starting to garner a little bit of sympathy for Perospero. I mean, obviously, he has his reason to want to snipe Sanji for assisting in crashing the party, but they really are taking Pedro's death out on him. He just happened to be the target of Pedro's suicide attack. So I'm not 100% sure if they're aware of that yet, because no one's really conveyed that He keeps saying it over and over again, but it's just like in one ear and out the other with the mink tribe. So pity aside for Perispera, I am excited to see this fight. And immediately after that, we get to see Marco save Zoro from an attack from King. That attack being called the Imperial Flame. Marco, who was previously seen kind of unconscious, ends up saving the day with a move called the Undying Thistle. And that was a nice little touch on the writer's end by having both Zoro and Sanji saved by someone else. That way the argument can continue. Anyways, after Marco saves Zoro from being attacked by King, he gives us a little bit of exposition on King's race and his origins. And apparently his species is from the top of the Red Line and is also a group of people who can burst into flames. And aside from Marco addressing him as King the Wildfire, it's not really clear if the Wildfire is an epithet or if it is actually the name of his race. So it'll be interesting to get a little more information on that, I suppose, but I bet we probably won't get that for another few chapters at the least. And it's at that point that King and Queen prepare to both attack Marco at the same time. And he jumps out of his Zoan form and more or less surrenders before he gives this really dope setup for Sanji and Zoro to attack King and Queen. And that's where we get the chapter namesake, where he says that it's time for the stars to take the stage. And as he says that, Zoro cuts himself out of his bandages and sets up the perfect timing for him and Sanji to have a dual attack against King and Queen. Zoro uses a move called Purgatory Onigiri, and Sanji uses a move called Diable Mutton Mallet. So after we get the amazing panel with King and Queen, we get another panel with Sanji and Zoro doing their dual attack. Just two great panels for this chapter. And the very last two panels are dedicated to Zoro and Sanji, and they kind of gives chills to any real Straw Hat fan when Zoro says that after they conquer that battle, Sanji completes his sentence by saying, "Yeah, we're going to catch a glimpse of Luffy as the king of pirates." And that statement at the end of the chapter really kind of gives us a good feeling about how this is going to go down and how much of an accomplishment it's going to be for Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and the rest of the Straw Hats to outdo and overtake the Beast Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates while they're at it. But in any case, that is how that amazing chapter was wrapped up. So now I guess we'll get into the ratings, and then we'll do a little bit of discussion about how this chapter went down and what I thought about it. All right, and as per usual, I'm going to start off my ratings in regards to the artwork. And for this week's chapter, I'm going to give the artwork a 9. It's really good artwork, two amazing panels that we get with King and Queen and Sanji and Zoro, and all the other panels regarding Raizo's fight and Killer's fight, and even some of the random panels we get with the Scabbards. I mean, it's all well drawn, it's all well done, it's just nothing was really mind-blowing, so I'm not quite going to give it a 10. So I think 9 is a very fair rating for this week's artwork. Next, moving on to the story, I'm going to give it a 7. We don't get a whole lot of progression. We get a little bit of stuff to be interested about, like the aspect of Killer potentially killing his own captain. And Oda did come through by giving us potentially the one-on-one fights we were looking for Zoro and Sanji in regards to taking down King and Queen. I mean, it could be possible that I'm getting a little bit spoiled on the last few fights and how they were followed through for at least 2 chapters apiece until the conclusion, because none of the fights we saw in this chapter were concluded, and nor did Luffy start making his way back up to the top of Onigashima. So I guess we can say that the story didn't really progress anywhere, didn't exactly wow me at any point, but they did give us some stuff to talk about and some stuff to speculate. So I think a 7 is very fair for the story for this week. All right, finally, we can talk about the hype. I'm going to give the hype an 8 for this week. There's a lot going on. We didn't spend a whole lot of time with too many fights or any one fight in particular. Narrowly, because we bounced around so much, I would typically give the hype rating a little bit lower. But that last few pages with Sanji, Marco, and Zoro, amazing stuff. That brought the hype levels right back up to where I needed it to be. I mean, the first half of the chapter wasn't super hype. It was definitely interesting, but not like hype per se. But the last half of the chapter, wow, just had me on the edge of my seat, and I was waiting to see where it was going to go. I was hoping that it wouldn't be, a few chapters worth of keep away for Sanji, but when he busted out of his bandages and joined the fight, it literally got me up there. So I'm going to give this week's chapter an 8. I think it's well earned. And then I guess now we'll move on to the overall rating for the chapter. And with those 3 ratings combined, their average and the average for this chapter's rating is an 8 even. Definitely interesting and entertaining, just nothing really wowed me from this chapter, aside from the 2 great panels that I saw. So I would say that typically it might have been a 9 or a 10-ish, but it just wasn't quite mind-blowing for me. It wasn't quite as smooth as some of the last few chapters went, so I think 8's pretty fair. And finally, a little bit of discussion about this chapter. First, I'll start by saying that I do appreciate how Oda decided to use Margot as that medium to say that this is the new generation. And in the same vein as Shanks, since they're roughly around the same age, it's kind of like he's passing the torch along with Shanks and trusting that torch with the Straw Hat Pirates. I mean, of all the characters present in this Wano situation, he would be the one to actually set up that dialogue. So good on Oda for that. I also do want to address the fact that we didn't get to see the end of the Rizzo fight. I mean, a ninja fight sounds amazing, but I'm not horribly invested in the outcome of that fight. Seeing as how Fukuda Koju is not really like a big villain in regards to Kaido and Big Mom, but I do want to see Rizzo get his moment per se. I don't want to see him go out to such a small character. And I gotta say, in terms of the whole Killer and Hawkins situation, I do appreciate the writing talent that went into making that decision. I don't know why I didn't see it coming, but it does make me really kind of want to see how Killer and Kid move forward with this. I mean, I imagine that Law will probably figure it out at some point, since he seems to have some kind of understanding of Hawkins' abilities. So if Law informs this to Kid, maybe Kid goes and joins the fight, or maybe Kid somehow contacts Killer to give him the go-ahead. I honestly don't know how it's going to go, but I am very excited to see how this plays out. And there's not a whole lot to say about the Neko and Parowin fight being started up, but I am incredibly curious about where the remainder of Big Mom pirates are. I mean, does Big Mom have them waiting in the wings for some particular purpose? Or are they just simply still having trouble to get their ship where it needs to be for them to join the conflict? I mean, I'd have to say that I do like the fact that the tables are turning, so to speak, when it comes to the Alliance versus the Beast Pirates. But those are still really big players who have yet to really show up and influence the turn of events. So I'm excited to see how they play it out, but I'm also a little annoyed that we haven't gotten at least an update as to what they're doing or when they're going to do it. All right, so apparently we got 15 minutes left until the end of the conflict for Wano, but that'll be the end of my review and my ratings for this chapter. If you guys like the content, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Also, please drop some comments down below if you guys want to discuss the chapter with me. My name is John. I'm with Adams Fam Anime, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.